It is looking more and more like Juan Soto's days with the Padres are numbered. That's what the baseball world seems to be indicating, and we will discuss that, the likelihood, and what this all means for the Padres. Good to be with you, Derek Togerson. It's been a few weeks since we linked up on one of these. How you been?
I've been good. How was the holiday season and all that good
Yes.
stuff? Yeah, I mean, now we
hmm
got Thanksgiving's over. Now we get to hunker down on the winter meetings and the hot stove. And yes, it does make absolute sense for Juan Soto to be traded from the Padres, which we will explain coming up right now on the On Fire podcast.
Yeah, and maybe a chance for you to take a victory lap because we even haven't had a chance to talk about Mike Shildt with you yet. And so I'm sure we'll discuss that as well. You were big on the Shildt train early on. And so a lot to get to, some other moves kind of within the roster and coaching staff. So much to discuss. First things first, thanks to OG's, the sponsor of the On Fire podcast, starting November 15th. Oh, this is a 2+ week old copy, apparently. Well,
Just
as
make it
of
December
November
1st.
15th.
Just change it. Just go up 15 days and you're good.
Well, I think it still applies. So I don't think it's old. It's just this promotion's been going on for a little while. When you buy an OG's gift card worth $25 or more in store, you'll also unwrap a custom OG's and Coca-Cola ornament, the perfect gift this season. Sip into the season with style at OG's beginning December 1st. All right, we're right on the cusp of that one. When you spend $35 and enjoy an OG's pint, you'll cheers to the season with an OG's holiday glass. You can add that to your collection. Thanks to OGs and all they do for On Friar and the NBC 7 sports team. Without further ado, the walk-up music. It is the On Fire podcast. He is Derek Togerson. I am Darnay Tripp, joining you on a Thursday afternoon. December is almost here, and as Derek referenced, so are the winter meetings. So it is no surprise that there is some scuttlebutt, so to speak, around the Padres. There always seems to be, and that's what happens when you have an active organization with lots of star players and guys that are likely on the move, or at least there's reason to believe they might be on the move. And right at the top of that list, Derek, is Juan Soto. And the conversation has picked up. You've had the expert types, the insider types, Ken Rosenthal saying, hinting at it kind of being a matter of when and not if.
Mm-hmm.
Today, Dennis Lin, who does a great job with The Athletic, an exhaustive piece kind of laying out the situation, the difficult spot AJ Preller and the Padres are in, and what the options might be. And among those options, moving Juan Soto. And you sound like you're in the camp that believes, yep, at this point, that's probably the move.
I think it almost has to be the move. They've almost painted themselves into a corner here, because as much as anyone wants to keep an offensive force like Juan Soto on your team, I think of the great philosopher Mick Jagger when he said, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. And what the Padres need right now is to find a way to get better while getting cheaper. And really the only way that I see doing that is you take a guy who's projected to make around $33 million in arbitration to fill one hole, which is Juan Soto.
Mm-hmm.
And you go out and get 2 to 3 pieces to fill multiple holes, pitching staff, corner outfield, bullpen. Find some things that there's some good quality pieces that will come back. And for a talent like Juan Soto, even if it is just for 1 year, you almost have to do that, because this is your biggest trade chip. This is your most desirable to other teams, Yankees trade chip. You almost have to do it now if you want to be viable with the kind of arms you need in your pitching staff right now. Nobody wants to not have Juan Soto on their team, but you almost have to do it because you have to make it up in the aggregate to make the entirety of the 26-man roster better than it is right now. And that simply does not let you have Juan Soto on your team right now. It seems untenable.
You laid it all out very well there, and I will say, and we do
I
already
think about this a lot, Darnay. Probably more than I even should.
This doesn't surprise. This is what happens when we don't have a chance to talk to you for about 3 weeks. You've got all this, these information, all these takes kind of stored up and ready to roll. If you're watching live on YouTube, get in the chat, as Eric already has.
Mhm.
The Soto question depends on if the actual budget is 200 million or between 220 and 230, kind of right on the fringe of the luxury tax threshold. I think a big part of this, as again Dennis Lin laid out in his piece, if you haven't checked that out, the penalties increase the more you exceed the luxury tax. So
and the more often you exceed it. And the
so,
Padres would be multiple time offenders now.
Yeah, 3 years in a row, right? So it gets steeper and steeper, and so more reason to try and hit the under, so to speak. And I that's a fair question there for Eric. The number we keep hearing is 200, but if there is some flexibility there, and if it is closer to 220, then maybe, you have closer to $35-40 million to work with to fill out the rotation, to fill out the bullpen, to fill out the bench, maybe make some changes in the outfield. You got a little bit more flexibility there. That part we don't. That's always a mystery with the Padres. We don't necessarily know. And in past years, they've always seemed to kind of exceed our expectations and what we think the spending threshold is. But this is a new age without Peter Seidler and with some of the limitations that appear to be there financially, stuff we've seen and heard of. That leads us to think, okay, they might be a bit more cash strapped than they have in the past. And if you have any thoughts on this or questions, hit us up in the chat. We'll get to those in the pod.
Yeah, they're at 190 to 195 right now. So unless you are non-tendering, the Trent Grishams are trying to trade him of the world, you've got to find ways to fill out. You have two starting pitchers. You got Joe Musgrove and you got Darvish. You've got 4 relief pitchers right now. You got to find ways to fill out your pitching staff. You have to, and you're not going to get a full pitching staff for, if you have Soto, you're popping it up to 220. You're not going to find 6 pitchers, 3 to 4 of them starters for $10 million. You're not, unless Pedro Avila is one and Matt Waldron is one, and you find some other, bargain basement guy to come in and be another. Unless you're convinced that those guys can fill out your starting rotation, you can't do it. You simply cannot do it. Now you have to trade Jake Cronenworth for cents on the dollar. Now you have to, God forbid, move a guy like Ha-Seong Kim for some pieces as well to get his $8.5 million off the books to bring in a second baseman who can play for 4. Now you have to really maneuver around here. So even if, and Eric makes a very good point, even if it is at 230, well, right now that 190 does not include Juan Soto's projected $30 to $33 million. So it's tough. It's really, really tough to do that unless they get super creative and they find some real bargain basement pieces that they can bring in here somehow.
Yeah, and you wonder if do you attach one of these contracts for Juan Soto? Then you are hurting your return. But the trade for Juan Soto, you're not just trading for parts. That's obviously a big part of that. You're trading for financial maneuverability. You're trading to free up space, and so that has to be factored in when you analyze the return. Like you almost have to consider whatever free agents that they sign with that leftover money. That's like almost part of the return for the trade for Juan Soto, because you could not have gotten those guys if you hadn't cleared up that money. Now, that's not the sexiest, most interesting way to look at a trade, because you look at what did this team get? What did this team get? But it is a bit more layered with the Padres because you're having to make this deal because of finances. It's not the situation like the Nats trade. When they dealt Juan Soto, it was part of a rebuild. It was because they wanted a bunch of promising young guys to hit reset. It's a different situation now with Soto. It's a different situation for the Padres, and it is a complex one because we're trying to figure out exactly like where they're at, where they can go, and how all the pieces fit. And I think you made a good point right off the top. I don't think anybody's like trade Juan Soto because he's bad and the Padres will be better off without Juan Soto. It's not what anybody's saying. It's with, gritted teeth that, it's the acceptance of the situation. And I found myself saying the Padres, much better team with Juan Soto. Any team would be better off with Juan Soto. Best opportunity to win in 2024 with Juan Soto. But I also just watched the 2023 San Diego Padres, Derek. And I watched Juan Soto have a very good season. Now, a rough start, but ended up having a very, very good season. Best offensive player for this team. And the team was still a disaster for most of the year. Now, wasn't necessarily Juan Soto's fault. I'm not putting that on him, but it goes to show you that there's more to this than just having a generational hitter. It helps having generational hitters. It helps having multi-silver slugger winners, but you need more than that. And how much time was spent in 2023 talking about issues in the bullpen, not having a DH, not having a bench. Well, that's because they had an imbalanced roster. And in trading Juan Soto, what you are attempting to do is have a more balanced, a deeper roster, guys that are there and ready to contribute in the event of guys injuring, in the event of guys struggling. We think the big four or potentially three will be better this year, but you just don't know. And so banking on the backs of stars playing cards doesn't seem like a wise plan going forward, given what we saw and given how the budget is even tighter than it was this past season.
Well, let's do some mental gymnastics. Let's break this down so that we can make ourselves feel better about what's going on. What you said is the Padres are a better team with Juan Soto on it. The Padres are certainly a better offense with Juan Soto on it.
Yes.
Okay. But are they a better team if they only have two starting pitchers? If you have a two-man rotation and then 3 bullpen days, you're probably not going to be a better overall team, even if you do have Juan Soto on it. Defensively, you're going to be better without Juan Soto playing left field. He's not a good defensive outfielder. So 2 of the 3 phases of the game improve if you do trade Juan Soto. And I know I am really trying to convince myself of all of this right now. Yes. But if we try and break it down and look at it as take any emotion out of it, and just look at it as we're looking at only analytically, are you better off overall if your offense loses 15% by trading Juan Soto, but your pitching staff improves by 33% by trading Juan Soto? Doesn't your team overall get better?
Yes, and
that's what I'm trying to figure out here. Like that's what we're looking at is you have to fill in all this other stuff. And again, it's only, more of your players are on offense. You got, 15 players versus 10 pitchers or whatever, 16 players versus 10 pitchers. So yeah, then you have to break the percentages down that way. But overall, you've got more players of a higher quality across the board if you trade them than if you just have one of those guys on your team.
Yes. And you make a good point there. And when I say, I think I'm speaking in generalities, like if all things are equal, having Juan Soto better than not having Juan Soto. But the only reason we're having this conversation is because your point is correct. The team is probably better off as a whole if you swap Juan Soto for starting pitching, for bench pieces, for another
Jason
catcher.
Dominguez, right?
Yeah, whoever it ends up being. We wouldn't be having this conversation if we didn't think that would ultimately help the Padres be a better, more well-rounded version of themselves. So yes, absolutely. And, obviously the defensive piece is what it is, but that's a trade-off I'm willing to make for Juan Soto's bat. Like I'm a little less worried about that. Although understanding that's not a place where he excels, and there's chances that there's some head scratching moments that maybe hurt you in a close game at some point in a 162 game season. But it's absolutely, I mean, you have, there's just so much that needs to be done on this roster. And I will say that, between 182, 189, that number is factoring in estimated arbitration salaries. I'm looking at Spotrac right now, and their active total payroll is 132 without any estimated arbitration
Gotcha.
salaries. And so you're in that 180 range, and then have that again, is it 20, is it 30, to fill out the rest of those pieces. And back to Eric, there's, again, estimating over 22 million in CBT to clear if they can move Cron, Carp, Grish. That should be explored before Soto.
Okay, take Carpenter out right now. Nobody's taking Matt Carpenter's contract.
Back to the Yankees.
You have to release him. You have to release him, and you're eating the contract anyway.
Back to the Yankees, where he excelled. There's the only reason he came to the Padres is because he raked at Yankee Stadium. Bring him back home. Lump him in with Juan Soto. It's only $5 million for one more year. It's the New York stinking Yankees. It's not the Jake Cronenworth contract that's going to linger for a number of years. Package him in with Juan Soto, and maybe you get one fewer minor league reliever back, but you're at least free of that contract and that roster spot.
Yeah, they're still not going to do that. I love Carp. He was the consummate professional this year.
Great guy.
No. I think there's more of a possibility that the sinkhole opens up and swallows Eric Hosmer and his $13 million that he's owed. That free that up than there is of them actually being able to trade Matt Carpenter for anything other than a bag of jock straps.
Yeah, well, it's the unfortunate reality. Is this the last year? Or is there one more year of through 2025?
This is the last year for Hosmer.
I think there's one more year. I think there might be one more. Yeah, there's 2025.
Son of a
12.2 this year, 12.2 in 2025. So you're factoring that in as well. And
that's worse than the Bobby Bonilla contract.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far. We're not paying him into like the 2040s, or I don't know what the equivalent would be, but that one is just incredible. But look, I mean, the reality of the situation is they have backed themselves into a difficult spot, and there's room for some criticism for the moves that AJ Preller has made. The Jake Cronenworth contract obviously comes to mind. Darvish comes to mind. Eric Hosmer's comes to mind, and I think it's fair to, and as we've done in the past, question those deals. Xander Bogaerts, as much as you overpaid him beyond what the Red Sox were offering him, and some of the trades that have been made that have, depleted the minor league system, which he's done well to restock, but it's cost them some guys that could maybe be ready to help in previous years. Now, again, how many of those guys are now active and contributing members to minor league or to Major League Baseball teams? Obviously CJ Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, but David Bednar. I mean, you could think of a few, but heck, Tucupita Marcano's back with the Padres on a minor league deal.
Gabriel Arias is not panned out in Cleveland.
Yeah, so you can maybe look at the Clevenger deal. Ty France seems to be kind of the one. Maybe Cal Quantrill, but it is not a long list of guys that are now just kind of killing at the major league level. But you then now have to wonder, with them in this situation again, where they're having to round out the roster and they need major league ready parts. You can't just get a bunch of guys that'll be able to help in 25 and 26. Are we entering a situation now where AJ's looking at the minor league top 30 saying, what can I get for this guy? What can I get for, these different ahead or, yeah. So it's a tough situation that they're in right now. I mean, obviously like Ethan Salas, hands off. Jackson Merrill, maybe, some of the young pitchers. I know you liked a lot what you saw from Alec Jacob. Ideally, Snelling and Lesko are off the list. Iriarte, Zavala.
The Iriarte's fastball is stupid. I want to see that guy in major. I want to see, and by the way, he's another one of those guys who might be able to force his way onto the pitching staff, maybe the starting rotation out of spring training.
Yeah, that's a hope. Paulie, Marcy. I mean, these guys that have done some things. Do you start to think, well, we could get some return for them that could help us, and ideally cost controlled, team controlled contracts. It's a dicey situation, and there's a lot of different directions that they could go.
Yeah, that's the gamble. is, I mean, most of these guys, none of these guys you just mentioned are at AAA. A lot of them are AA guys. Now, I think Jackson Merrill has a chance to hit his way into the opening day lineup, or on the opening day roster at least. He had a really good spring training for him last year. He's a known commodity. He's probably getting very close to being ready. The pitchers, we know Lesko's nowhere near ready. He just came back last year, threw a few innings after Tommy John surgery. He's off the table for probably at least another year and a half, 2 years. Snelling, maybe, but he started last year at Lake Elsinore. Jumped up 2 levels up to San Antonio. Maybe in the middle of the year, he's a guy you can talk about coming up and giving you some spot starts, like what Jackson Wolf did this year before they traded him. You got so many question marks, like really promising question marks, but not pending question marks. Like they're not imminent question marks. So you got to find other ways to fill these. Iriarte is a guy who might be able to pitch his way onto the major league club out of spring training. And at that point, I don't know if he's a starter or a reliever. They're going to give him a chance to be a starter. No question. That's what they do. But yeah, there's no, like, we're waiting for Ron Weathers and Mackenzie Gore because we're thinking, yeah, those guys are probably ready. They just have to show us that they can actually handle the workload. Like, we're not sure if these guys are ready or not. And that's a big issue.
And it sounds like the guys aren't as ready as the fan base would maybe lead you to believe. You know, it seems like there's some excitement.
Even for an organization that pushes prospects hard.
Yeah. And, you know, a guy you didn't mention is like Jay Groom, who was, you know, potentially one of those answers last year. Like if Jay Groom was the Jay Groom we thought he was going to be, then you're looking at a guy with, you know, maybe 15 starts under his belt and some experience going into this year and something to build on. But after that season, we just don't know. And so they're in a tough spot once again without, you know, clear answers and guys that could definitely help. We've seen it in the past. We've seen Abrams. You mentioned Merrill. We saw it with Tatis. Like we've seen guys come in and have really good springs and you know, make such a strong case that like the team can't help but put them on the opening day roster. And so hopefully something like that happens. But again, is that really a reliable path to take, like just hoping that some of these guys pop? And no, like you got to have some answers on the roster going into the spring, and those answers don't come free.
No, they don't come cheap either.
Yeah.
So it's God, it's I don't know, man. Can you roll the dice some of these kids? Maybe. And maybe that's the backup plan, but you don't want to make that the backup plan. You don't want to make that the plan that you end up having to come up with. You got to find somebody. Jay Groom, maybe he's a guy who we all know that El Paso specifically and the Pacific Coast League in general is not kind of starting pitchers. So maybe he's a guy who's like, okay, you get him out of that, put him in the National League West with 3 of the more hitter-friendly ballparks out there in Petco Park, Dodger Stadium, and Oracle Park, or whatever the hell they call the one in San Francisco nowadays. You can, maybe he'll have more success in the major leagues than he did in the minor leagues. You know, that's a possibility. I wouldn't say it's a probability, but he's, again, going to be given a chance. If anything, he has to do it this year, or else he's probably not going to be either on the Padres roster or have a major league future. This is a huge offseason and spring training upcoming for him. Maybe that's the guy. But what sucks is we got a lot of maybes, and I guess you could try this is instead of, you know, this guy looks pretty promising. Let's see if he proves it to us.
Yeah. We're all like sitting here crossing our fingers, hoping for the best case scenario, knowing that the worst case could be pretty dooming. Have you looked into, you know, I was looking a little bit at some of the Yankees guys and some of kind of the proposals that get thrown around, or the ideas for possible trade agreements that could be made. Again, the Yankees is the one that pops up all the time. Have you dug into that much? Is there any other teams you do or don't like? Let's hear it. Like what have you found? What do you want? What piques your interest? Because I like you said, you do think about these things a lot.
Jason Dominguez, man.
Yeah.
Give him Jason Dominguez, and it's a whole bunch of okay, whatever after that. Yeah. I want Jason Dominguez because that dude, I mean, he's the Martian, man. He's a badass.
Great nickname.
I wrote something for the website that said, all right, give us Jason Dominguez, Johnny Brito, and Nestor Cortez. And then we'll throw in a low-level prospect, whatever. Johnny Brito, a guy who came up, had a few nice starts for him in the Yankees in the middle of the year, and then everything went haywire, and they put him in the bullpen, and he pitched to a sub-150 ERA, so he can do either one of those things. He's 25 years old. Nestor Cortez was at one point an all-star, but he had shoulder problems this last year, and the Yankees are going to find other starters at that point. So he's entering his, I believe, second year of arbitration. He's probably not going to make all that much, $4 or $5 million. But the centerpiece is Dominguez when it comes to the Yankees. Another guy you look on there is maybe Spencer Jones, the La Costa Canyon High School kid out of Vanderbilt, who is actually ranked as the number 1 prospect in the Yankee system. But Dominguez is second. But again, he just got to Double-A for a cup of coffee this year. He's not going to help you in right now, which is probably what the Padres are looking for. So that's what I would look for. I mean, Volpe, I hear his name thrown about. I'm sick of we'll just get 800 shortstops and put them all over the field, whatever thing. Yeah, sure. Can you put a guy like Volpe out in right or left field? Sure. It worked with Tatis this year. Great. You can't continue to rely on that long term. Volpe is a hell of a talent. I also don't think the Yankees are in any way interested in parting with that guy, which leads you to Dominguez. And you're going to have to make a hard decision if you do, in fact, want a guy like Juan Soto, even if it is just for one season. So that's where it really starts and stops with me, with the Yankees, is Dominguez, and then we can work around the fringes. The other New York team is interesting to me because they've got a guy who's set to make about $11 million less in arbitration than Juan Soto, and who would solve your lack of OPS at first base problem entering his last year, and that would be Pete Alonso. Why not swap superstars? You know, you see it in the NBA all the time, where all these, massive names. It doesn't happen in baseball all that often. It doesn't happen in football ever. It doesn't happen in maybe occasionally in the National Hockey League. Swap massive names here, get a 45 home run just like that dude here at Petco Park. Sure, you maybe only get him for 1 year. You're still saving $11 million this year. You fix your first base problem. It allows you to deal Cronenworth again for cents on the dollar, send him somewhere, do whatever you have to do. Let him let him be your super utility guy, because Ha-Seong Kim's not leaving the infield anytime soon. Maybe he starts a year at second base while Kim plays third, while Manny Machado was coming back from his elbow injury because he can only DH. It gives you more flexibility that way. I'd be down with that. What say you?
It's a really intriguing proposal. And again, so much of this is fit, right? And what has this team lacked for a long, long time? Power at first base,
Since Adrian Gonzalez was traded, yes.
Yeah, straight up
future Padres hitting coach.
And a guy, like you said, you could bank on for, even a modest estimate of, 35 to 40 homers.
30 bombs, bam.
Yeah,
and that was back when Petco Park, especially to right field, was Death Valley. Like, it was hard to hit the ball out of here in the early years of Petco.
And so, two guys that, like you said, last year, their contract issues, kind of trying to figure out what the future looks like. That might be a good fit. And, man, I would love to hear the reaction to that one.
And then throw Tyler Megill in while you're at it. Just throw us, a guy who the Yankee or the Mets are probably a little bit low on, starting pitcher who can eat some innings out here. Put him with Ruben Niebla and see what happens.
Now, I don't know what the Mets have in their system. My guess is they're looking to add on top of Pete Alonso and not instead of Pete Alonso.
Yeah, I looked at their system, and their top 8 prospects are all position players. So you're going to have to get one of their young starting pitchers, which is why I think Megill would probably be a pretty good option for that. Mm-hmm. And again, the Mets will go out and just sign whatever pitcher that they want to sign. They did that with DeGrom. They did that with Verlander. They'll go out with Scherzer. They'll go out and find somebody to replace those guys who left. That's not going to be an issue for them. I have this sneaking suspicion. Were you listening to the Thanksgiving football game when Mike Tirico was talking about Blake Snell?
I missed that part.
Okay, so they were in Seattle, right? The 49ers were, dismantling the Seahawks. And he brought up Blake Snell for some reason. And he's talking about, he'd probably really like to come home and pitch for the Mariners here.
Yeah.
And then
he raised the 12 flag at the game that night.
Exactly. So, he's a Washington guy. We also know how much community and fit means to him. I mean, how it took him, 3 freaking years to get used to being in San Diego because he wasn't familiar with it because it wasn't his home. I think he would love to go there. Now, how about, so I started baking this whole thing in my head of, they've got a ton of starting pitching in Seattle. One of the very few teams that has a lot to deal with, right? So what if they do sign him? Well, they're going to have to get a bat somehow, right? Well, the Padres have a bat right down here that seems to be available. So what if the signing of Blake Snell in Seattle starts the dominoes falling and they can trade a guy like Logan Gilbert, maybe Gilbert, Jared Kelenic, and we'll bring Ty France back for a guy like Juan Soto. Like what I would be cool with that. What say you?
Our guy Rafa chiming in, and Seattle's the home of Microsoft, maker of Xbox, and we know Blake Snell.
You know how big a gamer that Blake Snell is, Rafa. That's a great call.
I love the idea. I enjoy the thought exercise. I just have seen too many quotes from Jerry Dipoto to believe that they would pay $33 million for a rental. And given how conservative that club has been, again, everything you're saying makes total sense. I just think, it seems like a reach for them to even pony up the money for Blake Snell. It just seems like such an obvious fit given how much, he is a Seattle guy and would love to be there, would love to go home.
Discount.
Yeah. And so I just, that even seems like a stretch for Jerry Dipoto. A guy that said, did you see his 54% quote? All we're shooting for is to win 54% of our games. And if you look at teams that have consistently
what an energize a fan base, Jerry. Well done.
Gee whiz. If you consistently win 54% of your games, you're going to win a World Series. And so there's just a collective groan out of Western Washington after hearing that. And so again, I love the idea. I love the creative approach. I was like, where is he going with the Snell thing? But you're right. It would make sense because of all the pitching that the Mariners have. Send that some this way, and you got, what an addition for Seattle. And I would love it for the Seattle fan base, because I've got some good friends up there and spent some time, watching and following the Mariners. To have a hometown guy and a generational type talent like Juan Soto, that would ignite the fan base, and that would be really, really cool.
And put him with Julio Rodriguez in that lineup in that outfield. You want to talk about energizing a fan base, doing the opposite of whatever Jerry's trying to say up there. My God, how do you, even if that's your plan, how do you say it publicly?
Yeah. Well, and they just dealt Eugenio Suarez too, and that caused some rumblings as well, because that's a beloved guy. He's done some good things for them. And so clearly a cost-cutting measure. And so,
they were clearing space for Snell and Soto. That's what they were doing.
Maybe that's what it was. Like the Padres dealing Barlow. That was to clear space for Snell and Soto. I don't think
the Barlow move is actually really interesting. It's exactly what they should be doing, right? If you look at the numbers, Aniel De Los Santos and Scott Barlow, very similar pitchers. Talked ERA, strikeout rate, but De Los Santos makes about $6 million less. So you're finding a way to get the same guy while saving money. You're going to see a lot of that type of stuff for the Padres this offseason.
Roberto said there was a hollow sound when you hit the microphone on your head, but knowing Derek, there's a lot going on up there. So it is anything but empty.
No, this is a microphone. My head's more empty than the microphone is, believe me.
Carlos thinks it would be dumb for Seattle to sign Snell. That team is going nowhere. But it's not about that. It's about the vibes, Carlos. That's all it's about. It's about the vibes. The vibes would be great on bump day, hometown thing, right next door to what was CenturyLink Field, and Snell obviously being a big Seahawks fan. It'd be great for them. I thoroughly enjoyed covering Snell. I think it'd be awesome if he stuck around. We haven't even had a chance to talk about the Cy Young. Derek's probably least favorite Cy Young winner of all time, Blake Snell, I gotta guess.
Least favorite it's up there.
I love it.
But and again, it's the walk thing, man. It's the walk thing. It's so, because I think a Cy Young winner to me is dominance. It is like, Felix Rodriguez, when he went like 13-12, whatever, I don't care what the record said. He was dominant. He was fun to watch every time. Fun to watch him pitch. Max Scherzer was fun to watch pitch. Justin Verlander's fun to watch pitch. It's not fun to watch Blake Snell pitch.
He gave up 19 earned runs in 23 starts. How is that not dominant?
It's not. He's dominant, but he's not fun. It's not fun. It's like watching if an NFL team went 17-0 by running the wing T.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a fun offense to watch. Like I love the service academies in college football. I will love them till the end of time. I don't want to watch triple option football all day, every day. It's not fun to watch. Blake Snell is not fun to watch pitch. So I can't get over that fact.
No,
because it's so hard.
I mean, the numbers are pretty incredible, but it is what it is. Did you hear what he said about Niebla and the walks? How Niebla is basically like, don't worry about the walks. It doesn't matter. You're just going to strike guys out and it's fine. And Snell was just like, that helped me believe in myself again and not worry about things that I don't need to worry about. Now, I'd venture to guess that Niebla wouldn't give that advice to just anybody, but good on Ruben Niebla to, again, like, coach your guys, know your personnel, know that that's something that could get in Snell's head and cause him to kind of struggle and things snowball in him, but also a guy that has swing and miss stuff, and he's got the potential to get himself out of jams. And so for him to give him that advice, which seemed to help unlock Blake Snell, I think was pretty impressive. And it tip of the cap to Snell for having that belief and maintaining that belief, and Niebla kind of knowing how his guys are wired and know how to kind of get the most out of them.
Yeah, that's another example of just how good Ruben Niebla really is, because thank you, Carlos. Yes. Watch, you've redeemed yourself. Watching walks is not fun, but you're right. Niebla would say that to a guy like Snell because he knows very few people have the pure stuff that Blake Snell has. He also knows how he's wired. He's also the guy who would walk out. And I remember talking to Mackenzie Gore early in his career when he said, what was it? He struggled a little bit. Niebla came out and he was just, bam, lights out. And so what was the conversation? He's like, well, he would tell me like, try to work the ball to this side of the plate. Because if he started telling me like mechanical things, I start focusing on that and I wouldn't know what to do. But if I just think of the end result, my mechanics naturally fall into line. So the fact that Niebla knows how to talk to each individual personality of his staff. I mean, Darren Balsley was like that. As we know here in San Diego, how great he was, the pitching whisperer. Ruben Niebla has very much got some of those tendencies with even more personality. So I absolutely love Ruben Niebla. I hope he never goes anywhere until the end of time. Make him Leo Mazzoni here, man. Make him stay here for 30 years because he is just that damn good at what he does.
Now, AJ said at the GM meetings that Ruben was sticking around. And then when Shildt had his introductory press conference, he didn't mention Niebla by name, just said, we're going to be working on the staff going forward. So I would think that what he said at the GM meetings is the case, but he also said at one point that Bob Melvin was coming back in 2024, and that was not the case. So I will be 85% sure that he's returning until I see the release from the Padres laying out their staff for the 2024 season. So
he's under contract.
He is under contract, which is true.
Yes, he got one more year on his contract. So he's
Bob Melvin.
Yeah, he's going to be here. There's no allowing him to talk to anywhere else. Now, Ryan Flaherty also, yes, he did, Roberto. Ryan Flaherty also had 1 year left on his contract, but after he did not get the managerial job, he was just signed by the Cubs to go and be their bench coach. So he was great, didn't get the job, was granted permission to go talk to somewhere else. Craig Counsell scooped him up pretty quickly to be the bench coach there. So now we're looking for another bench coach. You know who's available right now, Donnie?
And offensive coordinator.
No, we're not going to have an offensive coordinator. We need a hitting instructor. You know who's available?
Who's that?
Benji Heel. Ron Washington's not going to bring him back on his staff in Anaheim.
I think he just got a new job. But
when? I was driving over here to do this?
No.
I literally kept before I hit the road.
I want to say he got a job with a club in Mexico. I might be wrong, but I saw.
You'll leave a job in Mexico to come to your hometown in San Diego and be a bench coach. You're good there.
But I would think that would have been discussed. Maybe I I saw some posts. Well, I need to just look it up on Twitter. That would be a lot easier. I think that was everybody's hope, right? That he would go in that direction.
He'd be on the staff somehow, right?
Yeah, which would have been an awesome fit. But it doesn't appear that will be the case. But I would be 100% all for that.
Yeah. Now, because he usually does manage a Mexican Winter League team.
So maybe that might have been what it was.
Yeah.
But I can't find it.
And then Carlos. Here you go, Carlos. Actually, Carlos, you and I are thinking on the same lines here, man. That could be the Winter League.
Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, he has arguably been the most successful Winter League manager of Mexico over the last decade.
Roberto saying he got a job in Guadalajara. Gustavo, he'll be done by January at the latest. All right.
There you go.
Good to go for spring training. Thank you, fellas, for keeping us informed. Much appreciated. So I'm all for that. Hey, did you see one of the names that the day that Shildt was announced, one of the surprise candidates for the job? And I thought of you immediately.
That would be Adrian Gonzalez, wouldn't it, Darnay?
That would be Adrian Gonzalez.
See, you people need to listen to me more and not laugh.
You haven't even taken your victory lap for Mike Shildt, because you were one of the folks that was like in July mentioning Mike Shildt's name. So if you want to go ahead and take your victory lap now, I mean, the
no, man, I don't do that. All I'll say is listen to me moving forward because I got a track record. Okay, so Adrian absolutely interviewed for the job and actually acquitted himself quite well in terms of this job. Now, as we also know, and I'm not sure if I've said that on this podcast or somewhere else, but a lot of times teams will bring in guys to interview under the guise of managerial interview, but really it's to see, hey, you want to either blow our socks off or maybe come here and be part of this staff. Mm-hmm. So I could very much see Adrian being the hitting instructor for this team or a bench coach for this team. I think it would be great. I really think it would be great. And all the Agon hate, it's got to stop, man. It's got to stop. Yes, when he went to Boston, he said that the Red Sox were always his American League team because of Ted Williams, who's also from San Diego, by the way, y'all. I think everybody's ticked off at him because he had like a 6,400 OPS in his career against the Padres after he was traded to the Dodgers. So y'all, let it go. He's a Padre at heart. He's an East Lake High. He's a San Diegan. He owns a bunch of Jersey Mikes in town. Like he still has a very big footprint here. Let the dude come here and it'll be just fine. I've seen him teach hitting. He knows what he's talking about. And while we're at it, take Ron Renicky away from the Dodgers and make him your third base coach. That's a hell of a baseball mind to add. And he was an Angels third base coach in 2002 when they won the World Series and the bench coach for Boston when they won the World Series in 2018. The dude knows what he's talking about.
Carlos agrees. Adrian would be awesome for the staff.
Carlos, we're BFF now.
I think that would be cool. And that was, when that came out, again, it was after the Shildt news broke. There were a lot of people saying, hey, well, they could use a hitting coach. And so that would be a natural fit there. And, AJ said afterwards, it was a good experience for Adrian as well. Because like you said, hadn't gotten that opportunity before to interview for like a managerial opening. And so whether or not they were really giving him a true, genuine look, it was at least a valuable experience, probably for both sides, but certainly for Adrian to be in that seat and understand what that process looks like and how to best kind of position himself going forward. And I think one way to position yourself going forward is to be on a major league coaching staff and be very curious if, I think maybe even going back to 2021, you would reference Adrian Gonzalez as a guy that you would look to as a Padres hitting coach, which is kind of cool.
By the way, I'm loving the interactiveness of this podcast. Thanks everybody for doing this. This is like really fun.
Gustavo saying Benji, Adrian added to the staff, and Randy Arozarena traded, and we are in business.
Oh, dude, how great would it be to have Arozarena on this team?
Vibes would be immaculate.
I have absolutely no idea what you're going to have to give up to get him.
Well, and I think the reason why Arozarena has come up is didn't the Rays recently? There was a report recently that they would be willing to trade anyone, even Randy Arozarena, and so that got Padres fans fired up. And I think that was after the Benji Gill stuff, the managerial stuff played out, because there was that famous quote or line from Benji saying that he was going to take Randy with him. So that has maybe sailed, but if Benji's the hitting coach, then maybe not. Maybe that is still a possibility.
Well, Benji and Randy were going around Mexico, drumming up support for hurricane relief. So they're very good friends. They're very much loved in our neighbors to the south. It certainly makes sense. But you're right. If the Rays are willing to trade Tyler Glasnow, they're probably willing to trade pretty much anybody at this point. So it's make me a deal. And by the way, they've done some deals with the Padres in the past. It's not like, in fact, are we waiting for the annual Tampa Bay San Diego deal of some kind at this point? Like, it happens pretty much every year, right?
I don't know if they would, based on the way the others have panned out. Blake Snell was a bunch of prospects. We haven't heard from Luis Patino and others.
Xavier Edwards
Xavier Edwards haven't really had an impact, and the other being Hunter Renfroe. No, it's Hunter Renfroe and Xavier Edwards, I want to say, for Pham and Cronenworth.
Yes, that was a Pham trade, yeah.
And then I forget who else was in the Snell deal. Francisco Mejia, perhaps. And so Padres have typically gotten the better end of those deals, so maybe they'd be a little gun shy and knocking on AJ Preller's door or hitting them up. But who knows?
I mean, anybody short of Ethan Salas, and I'd listen. For a guy like a Rosarena, oof.
Eric is all in on Niebla, unlocking production for starting rotation gaps, get him by low fallen stars with stuff like Manoah, Kopech, and inconsistent but high upside guys like Cabrera. Let Niebla cook. I'm all about letting Niebla cook.
Oh yeah,
it's just
I would have said Luis Severino was on that list before he just signed with the Mets. That would have been one of those types of guys. Yeah,
but that's the problem. Is like, how many low cost guys are the low cost guys aren't as low costy as they used to be in this market. And so that's again part of the issue. It's like guys are making some money and the Padres don't have a whole lot to work with. And so I love that. And it worked great with Seth Lugo. Worked great with Michael Wacha. And so they've done in the past. And I don't think, we might have been talking about Seth Lugo. I don't think we're talking about Michael Wacha before last spring, and that was a great find. And so AJ has shown the ability to surprise us. Nobody was talking about Robert Suarez. Nobody was talking about Nick Martinez, and those turned out great. So there's always that in the back pocket to consider. There's just a lot of those spots that they need to fill up.
Okay, Randy Arozarena, by the way, I had no idea. He's got 3 years of arbitration left. He's estimated to get about $7 million this year. 3 controllable years of Arozarena. Damn, I'd be into that. Now you'd have to give up quite. You're talking about giving up a Jackson Merrill and probably another one of your top 2 or 3 pitching prospects. But dude, you want to talk about a low cost? You're getting rid of Juan Soto for a guy who's probably going to be a better fit in the clubhouse, for a guy who is going to be a hell of a fan favorite, make things very fun, who is also 20% of the cost for this year and better defensively, and obviously a stallion in the postseason.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Maybe you need to put up a thorough trade proposal for next week, winter meetings pod. What a Randy Arozarena trade would look like from the Padres' perspective. A couple minutes.
Well, I would say send them Juan Soto, but they're not paying.
Yeah,
so that's not going to be there.
A couple minutes to wrap up. Your knee-jerk reaction to the Nick Martinez deal. 2 for 26 with the Reds?
It's probably right on what he deserves. I hate to see Nick go. He's a great guy. I think he's probably not going to like pitching 81 games in Great American Ballpark. And in the American League or National League Central in general, a lot of hitters parks out there. So hopefully Nick gets his chance to start and start consistently. That's what he wants. That's what he's earned. I think that's what he deserves. So yeah, I'm happy for Nick to get that kind of a deal.
And I feel like we never really wrapped up the Juan Soto discussion, but a final thought on Juan Soto and what your reaction would be if a deal is done, and how we view the whole Juan Soto experience, knowing that the return is going to be, like, if you're lucky, like 70 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar.
Yeah. It was worth. I will still go back to, no matter what. I will say it was worth doing. It was worth doing. It was worth giving up what you gave up. You had to do it, because how often do you get? I am shocked that a talent like this will be traded twice before he hits free agency. That I would have never dreamt in a billion years would have ever happened with a guy like this. It was worth it to go forward, especially for 2022. That run to the National League Championship Series was phenomenal, and they probably don't do that without Juan Soto in tow. Will it hurt moving forward? Probably, yeah. But even if in 5 years we go back and whatever's happened, I would still come back to this day and say, yeah, do it again, because it was worth going after it and lighting that fire under the fan base the way that they did. So no regrets about the Juan Soto deal at all. You're not going to get back as much as you gave up, especially if James Wood turns out to be the stud that we think he's probably going to be, the other guy in that trade who's Double-A right now. But if you can get a guy like Dominguez back, who then turns into a 7-time All-Star, then you're okay. Then it's worth it. Then you're going to be in good shape. So, or you take 3 or 4 prospects from somebody and you flip them for Randy Arozarena. Then it's like, hey, we win. That's great. So the entire Juan Soto Padres experience, that story is yet to be fully written. And no matter what happens after that, I will still say it was worth doing, and they did the right thing.
Said it well. I give you a genuine and a wholehearted ditto. I agree with everything you just said. It's just, that's the way you probably just have to process it. Didn't turn out, if it goes this way, the way we would have hoped, but we'll always have 2022, and sometimes that's just kind of the cost of doing business. This has been a fun one. Shout out to Eric, Rafa, Roberto, Carlos, Gustavo. Anybody else? I think we'd hit everybody. That was a fun.
No, you guys just want to hop on and host a show with us next time?
Yeah, you guys are hosting next week. Appreciate it. Thanks to everybody for watching, for getting on the chat, and for listening. Good to be with you again, Derek. Have a great rest of your week and weekend, and we will be with you next week, I'm sure, to discuss some sort of something from the winter meetings. Can't wait.
It's going to be wild.